There's no real mystery to the reason that Advent, Advent and Christmas are about bringing the light when darkness looms all around. After all, we just switched over this month to standard time. And for the honor of one additional hour of sleep, we now have the privilege of going home when it looks like it's midnight outside. Well, at least I know why it's so dark. I'm a human being. But our dog Spirit and our cat Nessie both have tummies based on daylight savings time. And when their supper's an hour late now, they'll stand in front of me as if to say, "What is wrong with you people?" But there's no real mystery as to why we've gone through the rituals and prayers today that are part of the hanging of the greens. It really ought to be called instead the hanging of hope, or the kindling of light. Stephen sang so beautifully about the preparing the way of the Lord. And that's really what Advent is all about. We don't often think of it that way. Preparation. We've just read that scary gospel from Matthew, where Jesus tells us not even he knows when the hour is coming. And we as individuals certainly don't know which hour will be our last on earth. So why this gloom and doom passage on the first Sunday of 4 that's supposed when we think should be jolly? Well, one of the questions about that was answered by my colleague, Andreas Wagner, who serves a small evangelical Lutheran church in Pennsylvania. And of course, you understand that evangelical Lutherans are part of our denomination. And he puts it this way: why is Jesus coming in September as opposed to August or during tax season in April? We are always hit on the first Sunday in Advent following a fat Thanksgiving dinner with a gospel passage that puts the gloom and doom on us. It's almost as if Advent is suffering from bipolar disorder. There are two faces to Advent. The first face is a scary one, reminding us of the flood of Noah and those who were unprepared when disaster struck. A scary face of Advent is urging us to live with our eyes wide open, not taking for granted what God has given us, to live each day as if it could be our last. Wait a minute. Didn't we all just live through what has been one of the most horrific worldwide disasters with COVID-19? Aren't we alive today while 6,635,000 people around the world did not make it? And of that, 1,100,000 are right here in the United States. I'll tell you one thing that I'm not taking for granted, and that's God has sustained my health and yours. And now I can go, as I did a couple of days ago, and have Thanksgiving dinner with friends face to face. We forget so quickly. So what are we being urged to pay attention to? As Reverend Wagner says, pay attention to the people closest to you and how you give them love and how they give you love. Second, pay attention to God and what God is doing in the world. How can you awaken your senses to goodness and peace with all this negativity going around? These days, that may be a tall order with a constant barrage of violence and hate around us. But let me remind you, and this is so important, that the darkness has not conquered us yet. Think of Chef Jose Andres, who created the world's central kitchen and who sets up hands-on kitchens wherever a disaster is causing people to starve. He has raised this year over $150 million for this and has served over 150 million people. That's what I call being prepared to take it on the road to the curve where the darkness gathers. He's served meals to earthquake victims in Haiti, to the National Guard after the U.S. Capitol riots, to coronavirus workers in New Delhi, and more. None of that would have been possible, he says, and I find this very interesting, without his wife, Patricia Fernandez de la Cruz. They met down in D.C. when he was running a kitchen down there for the poor some 20 years ago. And he says of her, "It's important to have a good network of family. My wife is, I don't know who sent my wife to me, but I'm sure it's a god from some religion. Chef Andreas is someone who brings the light." And of course, that's far away, but even just think about this weekend, yesterday, the day before yesterday, when a woman crashed her car at 3 o'clock in the morning on Route 7. And who stopped? At first, another woman. And she's calling frantically that the car is in flames. And who was going by and saw her? But a firefighter from White Plains who lives in Brookfield. And he stopped without thinking, with no gear and no provisions to get into the car, and he tripped over a log. He picked it up and he took the log and smashed in the passenger rear window. And he talked to her and said, "I have to get you out," and her foot was stuck, and they worked at it, and finally he popped her out and dragged her up the hill before the entire passenger compartment was filled with flames. That's being prepared. That's having your eyes wide open. Our task, as the darkness gathers around us, is to keep our own light lit and to look for the other sweeter face of Advent, the one that's coming, the one we think of at Christmas. A human being, a baby boy with the joy and excitement of knowing, we know, looking at him, there's a joy of a brighter future if we follow him. This tension between light and darkness in these next few weeks is to prepare ourselves for these times when when darkness reaches our walls. As Reverend Wagner says, people who have trained in Advent to be aware of both sides of the continuum will not easily be swallowed up by these darker forces. They know there's more out there. It's our ability to seek out the light in the darkness that carries us through this season. We are all like a string of lights in this community. We're all strung together. And we know even if one light goes out, the others will stay lit in its honor. I know personally these days, we were talking about this before we started this morning, being tired. And there are days I feel like a dusty old ornament with most of my tinsel worn off. But all of us are ornaments on God's tree of life. As we journey towards Christmas Eve, when Jim and the choir fill the space with incredible music, we will dim the lights in the sanctuary because we know that the beauty of the Christmas candle shines best when it overcomes the darkness. We are that Christmas candle. May your own joy grow throughout the weeks ahead. Amen. I send you forth like little points of light. And it's up to you to fan that flame by making sure that you nourish yourself during this hectic period, by making sure you nourish yourself if you're going through any sense of loss at this time of year, that you nourish yourself because you deserve it. And take some time this week to be with you, and sit and think about this person that you are, because you are beautiful and a child of God. No matter how imperfect you may know that you are. I want you to bless that person, just as you would the tiniest child that came to you for a hug. May God bless you and keep you all this week. May God open your heart to light and love, and may you strive for peace and justice in this world, now and evermore. Amen.